We're almost there. Our Lenten journey is nearing the end. And with the advantage of living a couple of thousand years after these events, we know how the story is going to end. We want to easily rush to the resurrection and celebrate Easter. But today is not about that. It is about the week to come. The disciples entering into this week did not have the knowledge that we had, that Jesus would come back to life. Jesus had hinted it, but in all cases they did not fully understand. In Jesus they saw hope. They saw someone who they did call the Messiah, and they believed he would overturn the foreign rulers that were in their land. The disciples had followed Jesus for 3 years, and they were getting used to being with him. Jesus knew the end, and during this most critical week of the journey, he was a non-anxious presence. And he, right to the end, was being tempted, like he was in the desert when the journey began. Jesus kept on focusing on his mission to go to the cross. He was tempted to save himself. When Judas betrayed him, he agreed by saying, "Friend, do what you are here to do." And right after that, one of the disciples struck one of those who was sent to capture Jesus and cut off his ear. The disciples were trying to save him, but Jesus told the disciples not to fight. After being found guilty of blasphemy by the high priest, Jesus was taken to Pilate. Pilate tried to save him, but Jesus did not respond to the accusations. Pilate had the power to save him, and Jesus could have saved himself, but did not. Pilate wanted to save him and tried to have him offered for release, but the crowd asked for death. Jesus was mocked by the soldiers as he was prepared for death. Jesus was later mocked again as he hung on the cross, where it says in verses 39 to 40, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself if you are the Son of God. Come down from the cross." These voices tempted Jesus. He had the power to save himself, but he did not fall into temptation. Throughout this narrative, the disciples fell into temptation. They denied that they would betray him, and they denied that they were going to deny him. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus asked a few of them to stay awake with him, but they fell into temptation when they chose to fall asleep. Upon his arrest, they tried to stop it, and in temptation decided to attack those who were there to arrest him. Upon his arrest, they scattered as they wanted to save their lives. They had abandoned Jesus in the most critical time in his journey. We, like the disciples, fall into temptation. We have agreed to go on this Lenten journey, but we fall into temptation when times get tough. We try to make things better. We try to jump to the Easter story as we encounter the most difficult parts of the journey. Whether we chose to give something up for Lent or not, we have had to give up things in our lives the last few weeks. We have had to give up in-person gatherings. We've had to stay at home. We've had to give up birthdays and anniversaries. We've had to give up traveling. Most of us have been doing our part, and we're tempted to get back to normal as soon as possible. Unlike the disciples, we know this will come to an end. But like the disciples, we're tempted to try to avoid what must be done. Some are still getting together. Some are still not social distancing. Some of us want to have fun as the weather gets warmer. But before we get to the time when life gets back to normal, we still have to face the critical time ahead. For the disciples, it meant seeing Jesus die on the cross. Before we look to that bright future, we, like the disciples, will need to go through more difficult times in the next few weeks. But before we can get to that time that we're looking for, there will be tougher times than this. As we face the dark week of Holy Week and the dark weeks ahead, we're encouraged to stay with and follow Jesus. Thanks be to God. Amen.
We're going to try another hymn now. Instead of Hosanna, we're moving to the latter part of Holy Week with this hymn, There is a Green Hill Far Away. If you're using Voices United, it's found on number 152. It seems unusual to have an offering time during this online worship when the offering plate cannot be passed. During this time of physical distancing, when we cannot gather together and pass the offering plate at Zion or at St. Paul's or St. Andrew's, we encourage you to sign up for PAR, pre-authorized remittance, if you've been thinking about it. And you can contact your treasurer if that's an option for you. And we thank those already on PAR because their gifts have ensured that there is some money coming in to help pay ongoing expenses as long as our church activities are suspended and the buildings are closed. Now, if PAR is not something for you, you can mail a check or even some post-dated checks to the church, which would be a great option for those who can manage that. And if you are able to give electronically, there is also the option of e-transfer, at least at Zion. So please contact Treasurer Lori Vincer to discuss this option for those Zion folks out there. Whatever you can give, or if you can manage to give even a little more at this time, or an over and above gift, it would be really helpful as our churches work to pay the bills over the next weeks and months. Thank you for all of your gifts. And we also remember that this time in worship is not only about giving back a portion of our financial gifts to the church to be used to participate in God's mission in the world. This is also a time when we offer other gifts to God in thanksgiving. Gifts like music or leadership, gifts of prayer and compassion, the gift of support to another in need. There are many, many gifts we lift up and offer to God. And so now I invite you to cup your hands together, close your eyes, and imagine putting all of your gifts into your hands and lifting them up to God in offering. Lord, accept and bless all the gifts we offer to you. Take them and help us as your church to share them in love, as you shared your Son Jesus with us in love. Amen.